Few people have held an entire country hostage as brutally and efficiently as Pablo Escobar, the terrifying and terroristic drug kingpin who ruled Colombia's cocaine trade throughout the 1980s and early 1990s. He was a ruthless yet multifaceted crime lord who is hated by many and loved, also surprisingly, by many, as it turns out. Although Escobar was only 44 years old when he died, his life and deeds had a massive impact that continues to send shockwaves even today. And in the video today, we're looking at his story. Number 10. He got into the life of crime early. Pablo Escobar never really had to fight his way out of the slums. He was born on December 1st, 1949 to a lower middle class family in the city of Rio Negro, but he soon moved to Envigado where he grew up. The teenage Escobar was fascinated with making easy buck, so he easily gravitated towards the life of crime. His first operations were fairly small time, yet characteristically ambitious. He smuggled radio equipment and famously stole tombstones from graves to sandblast the names off and sell them to Panamanian contacts. All along, he dreamt of bigger things. Even during his street criminal phase, Escobar told his family and friends that he wanted to be the president of Colombia one day. And in a sense, he kind of achieved his dream. Eventually, young Pablo discovered a new trade. Colombia's neighboring countries, such as Peru and Bolivia, were huge growers of the coca leaf, and he started smuggling a certain substance derived from that plant known as cocaine. And the rest, as they say, was history. Number 9. His ingenious smuggling methods. The key to Escobar's success was that he managed to establish secure smuggling routes for his product pretty early on and then enforced them so efficiently that at the height of his powers he was responsible for 80% of the cocaine in the United States. He decided to stop using traditional mules and started using planes. On a single flight, they would haul up to 500 kilograms of cocaine to the Bahamas, where the product would later be moved to the United States. Escobar's drug manufacturing labs, they were equally clever. One 200-person lab had all of its employees living in houses built on small wheels, so whenever a plane radioed that it was coming for a pickup, they'd roll the houses to the side to reveal a secret landing strip. Later, once his routes were safely established, Escobar moved to massive cargo planes that could fly up to 145 tons of the drug, and he even acquired a couple of remote-controlled drug submarines from the Soviet Navy. Meanwhile, he used a luxurious Learjet to smuggle the drug cash out of the US, figuring that the yuppie status symbol plane was so flashy and in your face that it would never be searched. Number 8. His Plata or Plomo policy and amazing death toll. One of his most famous policies was plata or plomo, or roughly translated, silver or lead. This was the question that he or one of his lackeys asked many a government official and police officer during his reign of terror, and the choice was simple. Either take Escobar's money and spend your life in his pocket, or take his bullets and have no life at all. Sometimes people either didn't choose money or were otherwise in Escobar's way. As a result of this policy and other occupational hazards, it's estimated that Escobar was responsible for the deaths of over 5,000 people. He even encouraged the Medellin cartel's hitmen to kill every police officer that they came across, to the point where he paid them all a kill fee of roughly $660 per dead policeman. The ruthlessness of Escobar's methods is hard to convey, and many survivors feel that Narcos and other shows and movies featuring the drug lord have never been able to properly present the fact that he was the source of a great many rivers of blood. Number 7. His relationship with the competition. Pablo Escobar was not a nice man, especially if you got in his way. As such, his competitors tended to get the lead part of his famous question pretty quickly. One of his favorite targets was a rival group called the Cali Cartel. They were led by Gilberto Rodriguez Ojuela, a very Machiavellian figure known as the chess player. Ironically, despite Escobar's Medellin cartel initially controlling the game, the Cali Cartel came out on top at the end. Cali was a much more mild-mannered and well-behaved group that did kill people when necessary, but preferred to use more civilized tactics, read bribery, and integrated themselves fully with society rather than rule it with an iron fist. When Escobar and Medellin were busy strong-arming their opponents with bullets and bombs until they received the full ire of the Colombian and US governments, the Cali Cartel just neatly sidestepped the onslaught by dropping out of sight and quietly returning to work when the dust settled. As a result of their carrot and not stick tactics, by 1989 they were actually shipping more cocaine than Escobar. Number 6. His insanely luxurious lifestyle. Pablo Escobar's infamous 1980s dwelling Hacienda Nápoles was a vast ranch full of strange sculptures, swimming pools, replicas of drug smuggling airplanes, and most famously, a large zoo. Escobar was fond of smuggling animals into the ranch, and by the time the government confiscated Hacienda Nápoles in the early 1990s, the menagerie included creatures such as elephants, giraffes, and even hippos. The hippos are actually still around. They ended up escaping and have thrived in the wilderness. Today, there are estimated to be about 40 to 60 happy hippos roaming about. Yet somehow Hacienda Nápoles wasn't even Escobar's most luxurious pad. In 1991, the billionaire grew tired of his life as a fugitive who was in constant danger from his enemies, so he decided to cut a deal with the government. He would surrender and go to prison on the condition that he would be able to build the prison. Not only would this technically serve justice, but Escobar would also be safe from his enemies and other cartels. The end result was even more luxurious than his previous accommodations. It was a massive palace called the Cathedral, and it loomed over the city of Medellin. The cathedral featured a ridiculous amount of amenities, such as its own football pitch, hot tub, and even a giant dollhouse. Escobar would host massive parties and get-togethers, sometimes happily kicking ball with the Colombian national soccer team, while prison guards served them drinks. This happy arrangement, it soon went sour when Escobar murdered 2 underlings on the premises. The government was less than thrilled with the drug lord happily killing people while technically within their custody, and decided to try and move Escobar to a more conventional prison. This went roughly as well as could be expected. The ensuing confrontation required military intervention, while Escobar quietly slipped away in the turmoil and vanished into the countryside. Number 5. His reputation as a hero of the people. Not everyone saw Pablo Escobar as a frightening criminal. Many poor Colombians actually compared him to Robin Hood because he spent a significant amount of money in various projects that aided the poverty-stricken people of his country. Even today, the drug lord remains a popular yet divisive figure among the people of Colombia. Pablito stickers that bear a Che Guevara-style stencil image of the ruthless criminal routinely outsell Hello Kitty and Jesus at Medellin's street market stalls, and the city's commercial district is awash with wristwatches and t-shirts bearing his image, and books and DVDs telling assorted versions of his story are also very popular. In Medellin, the only thing people can agree on about Escobar is that he's a part of their history. Some say that his iconization doesn't really concern them because they were too young to witness his reign of terror. Others genuinely think of him as a saint and a source of national pride thanks to the many gifts that he showered on the city's poorest people in order to gain their loyalty. Others still look at Pablito's pop culture status with sadness because they remember the fathers and the family members who died in the monstrous crime lord's constant war against the law-abiding world. Number 4. His insane fortune. Understandably, Escobar's empire netted him an insane amount of cash. Because it was criminally earned cash money, it's also very hard to say precisely how rich he was. Despite the fact that everyone and their dog knew what Escobar was doing for a living, Forbes tried to keep track of the cartel leader's wealth and accepted him onto its prestigious list of billionaires for a whopping 7 years. The DEA actually helped them estimate the drug lord's net worth, which may or may not be why the magazine also managed to predict the year that Escobar finally died. According to Forbes, Escobar peaked at a solid number 7 spot on the billionaires list, but it's anyone's guess how much money he actually had. Most reports seem to settle on a ballpark figure of about $25 billion or thereabouts. Number 3. Pablo's political career. Despite the fact that he was, to put it bluntly, one of the world's most notorious criminals and terrorists, Escobar always had political aspirations. A large part of his Robin Hood antics was to gain public support for his campaign for a seat in Congress, which, much to the horror of the less mass-murdering politicians of the country, he actually ended up winning. In the Congress, he continued his seemingly civically minded ways and machinated many neighborhoods' rejuvenations, football fields, reforestation programs, and hardware donations. Of course, Escobar had ulterior motives all along. His main political focus was, of course, to ensure that Colombian citizens could not be extradited to the US. However, this eventually all bit him in the rear. First, Colombia's justice minister called the gangster out as, well, a gangster. Then, a politically influential newspaper man managed to locate an old news story that showed that Escobar had been arrested in his youth for possessing a not insignificant 39 pounds of cocaine. As a result of this multi-directional attack, Escobar was booted out of Congress, got the FBI on his tail, and eventually had to go on the run. Number 2. Huge amounts of his money was literally wasted. The best way to describe Escobar's true wealth is with anecdotes. It is said that roughly 10% of his money, an estimated $2.1 billion, would be written off every year simply because rats would eat it in storage, or there would be water damage, or the money was simply misplaced. Another famous way to describe his wealth is that the cartel had to spend around $2,500 a month just to buy the rubber bands that they'd use to bind the stacks of bills together. As a result of his extreme wealth, Escobar's relationship with money was somewhat different than a normal person's. At one point during the fugitive stages of his life, Escobar and his family were hiding from their enemies in a mountainside hideout. When the family's daughter became hypothermic, Escobar solved the situation by burning $2 million just to keep her warm. Number 1. The death of a drug lord. So who killed the narco-terrorist Pablo Escobar? The answer, it remains shrouded in mystery even today. We know that he was gunned down on December 2nd, 1993, while trying to pull off a rooftop escape from the assassin squad that had attacked him at his hideout in Medellin. A famous image of Colombian government troops posing with his corpses led many to believe that he was killed by the Search Block Troops, a special police unit formed to put an end to the drug baron. However, multiple sources indicate that the men in the picture might not have anything to do with Escobar's death, or if they did, they may have not been legitimate cops or soldiers. Escobar was also hunted by a group known as People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar, or Los Pepes for short. This group of angry vigilantes consisted of shady paramilitary dudes, rival drug criminals, and just regular people who were scorned or fed up with the billionaire criminal. This less-than-lawful group was likely funded by Escobar's mortal enemies, the Cali cartel, and according to persistent allegations, they received a ton of help from the American and Colombian governments. Yep, the officials allegedly let loose a gung-ho gang of punishers to deal with Escobar once and for all. Well, 1993 saw Los Pepes wreak havoc on everyone even loosely associated with Escobar, taking down as many as 6 of the billionaire's associates every single day. Escobar retaliated with bomb attacks, and Los Pepes returned the favor by destroying his properties in turn. This cat-and-mouse game finally ended in early December when, again, allegedly, a group of Los Pepes joined Search Block in their final mission against Escobar. And, well, according to a Los Pepes member known as Don Berner, it was a member of Los Pepes who fired the lethal shot. Of course, to make things even more confusing, there's a third potential killer, and that's Pablo Escobar himself. According to Escobar's son, Sebastian Marroquin, the Medellin leader had always planned to shoot himself in the right ear if it ever looked like he was about to be taken alive. When it comes to the identity of the person who finally ended Pablo Escobar's reign of terror, an American soldier who was involved in the hunt for Escobar probably puts it best. Nobody is ever going to tell you. You have to surmise. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, give us a thumbs up below, and do not forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Looking for something else to watch? Either check out some videos from the archives on the screen now, or why not subscribe to my other channel called Biographics. We actually did one of those all about Pablo Escobar, looking into his life in depth in a little more detail. So go check that out if you fancy it. And as always, thank you for watching.